Let's take a very quick look at the idea of classes and objects. These are the foundations of object-oriented programming, and we're going to get to them in depth in a future lecture, but we're going to start borrowing ideas from it as we start looking at data structures in Python. And so I want to lay out some of the basic terminology and ideas because that'll help both with the data structures and will get you familiar with some of these syntax elements, which will help when we move on to full object-oriented programming. So let's say we have a robot. What do we know about this robot? Well, the robot that we have has some attributes. These are things that we know about it. So it could be its name, its height, its age, its operating system, what languages it speaks. You can come up with a big list of these things, but essentially these are things that we know about the robot, and we could represent them as name-value pairs. So we could say the name is equal to whatever the robot's name is. The height is equal to whatever the height is. The attribute is the name part of that, the things that we have listed here. Each robot is going to have the same attributes, a name, a height, and age, but the value for those attributes will be different. So it may have a different name or a different height. But the attributes are those things that we know, not the values of them, but the actual categories of things that we know. Robots also have things that they can do, and we call these methods. So for a robot like this, it might be to walk forward, to back up, to wave. Those are actions that it can perform. All robots will have these actions available. So they're general things that we expect any robot should be able to do. So methods are things they can do, attributes are things that we know about them. So to put this into the language of object-oriented programming, we have classes. These are categories of things. So in this example, we're talking about a robot is a class. That's a category of things. So it's not an individual robot, but there is a category called robots. And robots have attributes like names and heights, and they have methods, things they can do like walk forward or wave. An individual robot has all those attributes along with their values. So the robot, we know it has a height, and then an individual one is going to have its particular height and its particular name. It's going to be able to do all the methods or the actions that any robot can do. But a class is referring to that general category of things like robots. Similarly, we could have a category like cars. That refers to all the cars that exist in the world. It's a general category, and we know they have things like a mile per gallon, some engine specifications, horsepower, that sort of thing. All cars are going to have those attributes, but each individual car will have different values for those attributes, and there's a set of methods that we know that every car can do. Hopefully, if it's working, it can drive forward, it can go in reverse, it can turn left and right. So classes are those general categories of things. Then when you have a specific one, that's called an instance. So a particular robot would be an instance of the robot class. A particular car, your car, would be an instance of the class of things called cars. These are the actual items that are members of that category, and their attributes, the attributes that every member of the class has, like for our robots, every robot has a name and a height. An instance will have specific values that go with it. So the name of our robot might be Bob. The height might be 60 inches. So all of those attributes are available to every instance of the class, but an instance will have values for those particular things. There's also the way that you put these together is with the dot operator. So this is a period. We're going to refer to it as dot in programming. And it gets access to an object or an instance's attributes and the methods. And this is actually something that you've seen before. So when we've been working with lists, we've used this method called append. So we'll do whatever our list name is. It's called mylist. We'll do mylist.append and then whatever value we want to append onto the list. So append is a method that's available to our particular list called mylist, but it's available to any list that's out there. So essentially you can think of lists as a class and your particular list as an instance or an object from that class. The dot is the way that we go from an instance to any particular attribute or method. So if we had our robot called Bob, we could say Bob Robot would be the variable name, and then we would put a dot after that. We could do bobrobot.name to get the name, bobrobot.height to get the height, bobrobot.wave to make it wave. So that dot goes from the variable name that represents an instance of a class or an object to the attributes and methods. We're going to talk a lot about this when we get into object-oriented programming in a couple weeks, but like this example shows here, the dot operator and using that to connect variable names to instances and methods, that's something that we're going to start using with data structures. So this hopefully gives you a little bit of a handle on that, and you can think about it as part of this object-oriented idea as we're using it in data structures, so you're familiar with it when we get to object-oriented programming.